Probably do that too. Record. Hey everyone, welcome to Thursday, the weekly briefing. It's good to see some familiar faces, as we always said hi to you, and we get started. We'll probably give this about 15 more seconds because the email goes out, people press that button and start rolling in. But while people are waiting, Jay, let's give them a little bit of a background because we wrote in the email today that we've been consulting for 20 years. And I don't want to age you too much, but I think you're on mute too, by the way. I don't think you're at the 20-year mark with me yet, but you've got to be pretty close.
Well, I thought that was a cumulative number. I'm not old enough to have been consulting for 20 years, right? I'm just a baby.
Yeah, right. When did we start? 2008?
Yeah, 2008 or 2010, I think is when it was that that fateful day of, hey, what do you do? What are you doing? And then anyway, and then here we go.
So those who don't know Jason lives near me in Oregon. When I first moved to Oregon, Jason was the first people I met, and we became friends, acquaintances and friends, and would run into each other. And then one day, as RevThink was rolling along and getting busy, I just asked Jason if he would join me in this little journey. And it's been quite a journey for the last 14 years, easily. If not more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of coffee been consumed between the two of us over these many years.
A lot of that place on Traction Avenue in LA. Those mocha milkshakes or whatever.
Oh, right.
It was like you felt like you were having coffee, but also dessert at the same time. So it was like, speaking of sins, it was less sinful, you know?
Yeah, that was by Roger. There's got to be someone here that knows that place. Groundlings or something, maybe? Or
I can't remember what it was called.
It was in near Little Tokyo. All right, let's dive into the conversation. Because Jason and I have been working together for so long, there are patterns we've seen, successful trips that people have taken. And really, we've been in and out of companies, of all shapes and sizes for the last 15 years or so. What that means is that we're recognizing patterns and seeing opportunities that business owners don't often take advantage of. And really, there's three major points of failure that we often see when it comes to business management and business ownership. I think Jason, there's a plug behind you on the wall, if that's...
I'm on it. I'm good.
So when Jason and I were thinking of the topic today, we're like, where would we cover? How do we know what we know? And where is the kind of ROI when it comes to certain decision making? And we defined these three major areas of what it takes to run the business and really what holds people back. So Jay, I don't know if you want to kind of start with a little bit of background or even one of your first stories of somebody with certainty that you've seen progressed today. We'll keep everyone anonymous a little bit, but progress beyond the limits that most firms have, and what the turning point is for them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd say, it's definitely been one hell of a ride, if you will, in the last several years, just being able to partner with studios and and develop them. And one of the things that I have seen as we've consulted and helped grow companies is this evolution of a family run type business to a business run type business, one that, one of the first things, and I'll tell a funny story about this, not related to a studio, but one of the first things that, we got saying was, at some point you have to fire your mom. Like you can't have her being your, whatever it is, your bookkeeper, your assistant or something along those lines. You have to grow up. And I'll never forget, I was coming online with a company whose bookkeeper was their mom, and fantastic client. Things were okay and things like that. But I remember sharing with someone else, a friend of mine who had a pretty decent sized business, not in our industry, just was a friend of mine. And I said, oh yeah, in this company, I mean, they need help. I mean, their bookkeeper is their mom. I said, and he's like, that's who my bookkeeper is. And I was like, okay, insert foot in my mouth. But it's an interesting evolution because what you're really doing, right, is you're finding the people that are close to you. You're finding you have these, the RevThink equation, needs plus resources equal solutions. You have these resources, and a lot like your mom or like friends. Shoot, one of the first companies that we consulted in, like, I remember the reason that one of the partners was a partner was he had the apartment that they were using as their office.
That's all right.
So that was it. Like, that was, and it was clear after 5 or 7 years of being in business that his value proposition to the company was like it had eclipsed him. It was beyond him. And the
25% ownership because you own the apartment we started the business in is not the moment you're
or like it was your college, dorm or whatever. It's like, that's kind of how it started. So that has been one of the most rewarding aspects of of the consulting with different studios, has been the evolution of companies who take those people that they trust. And believe me, a lot of us couldn't have gotten started if we didn't have that person that we trusted, or that resource that was around the corner. And we said, well, you're not a creative director, or you're not a CFO or what have you, but I'm going to leverage your talent as long as I can. And that's natural, and it happens. The sin is, if we're going to bring it back to that, is knowing that it's time to move on and not doing it, because it's hard to do. It's inconvenient and difficult to let go of that trusted relationship in favor of someone else who's going to grow your business.
Well, I love that you're bringing this up right after we told the story that you and I were close relationship, and I dragged you on because of proximity.
Yeah.
So now, Jason, the real reason you're here is I need to tell you something. It's time for let's go back to that, because what's really interesting about an entrepreneurial business is this family dynamic, right? You literally hire your family. You're doing what you can because you don't have money, you don't have leverage, you might not have all the projects, but what you have is relationships. So you grab the relationships and you pull them in and you say, because I trust you and you trust me, let's do something together. A small business does not work that way. A small business has titles, positions, salaries, roles, and you're trying to grow that business toward the opportunities, the greater opportunities the company can accomplish or kind of conquer. And those individuals, just because you knew them or related to them, doesn't mean they're the best players on the bus anymore. And there is a moment you have to move on. So yeah, you said to your friend, I can remember a moment where I shot that off one time with a client. I don't say it anymore. Like, sometimes you have to fire a mom because way too often it's like, well, no, my mom is a bookkeeper. I'm like, well, I was right.
Yeah.
But here's the situation you're in. If you think that there is somebody that works for you right now that that another person would be a better fit, but you're afraid you can't let them go because you have an ongoing relationship, you're dealing with that dynamic. And let's be very clear, we're not saying get rid of them just because you know them or just because they're not thriving. But what we're saying is it's possible that's holding you back. And when you're growing and maturing as a business, there's just moments where some of those relationships aren't going to work themselves out anymore. And you have to fire the guy that is no longer 25% partner just because he owned the apartment you started your business in and hasn't contributed in 6 years since then. I love that one. Here's mine. It actually comes to delegating. So I put this in the realm of leadership. What often holds companies back is leadership. And what I mean by that is some of us are very natural leaders. We have vision, we have purpose, we can set direction. And, the people that are working with us often believe in that vision and they'll follow us. That's a great thing. And we're leveraging that vision. But leadership also requires you to lead and not do. And we often hold back delegating some of our responsibility to the right people because of some internal fear. I see this most often, Jay, you'll know this one. I see this most often when someone's telling me they're checking they're looking at their checking account balance every night at 2 a.m. to make sure they have money. The reality is that that person's trying to do too much. And one of the
Mhm.
easiest things you can do is move on from outside services. You can just hire a CPA. You can hire a bookkeeper. You can hire an IT person, and you don't have to do all that. So stepping into that leadership role and recognizing I have a need and it needs a professional service, and I need to get out of my own way and slowing down my company and not rebirding the server instead of calling clients. I got to move out of my own way and do it. And that delegating is a key one. I think you've run into that situation before too. Again, it's in that transitional season right before someone steps into it. They're holding on to the wrong people or the wrong situation because of that lack of delegating. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of the one relationship that you and I had where they had hired a college student to do their books instead of some of the new financing. And they're like, well,
Mhm.
she's a math major. She can figure it out, is what they would tell us. And we're trying to say, like, at the level that you need to go, you actually need to have someone that understands tax and tax consequences, not just the convenient person that you've already hired. And you could hear the moment of fear that they had is, well, what if a professional looked at my books and saw all the mistakes I made?
Mhm.
I'm more comfortable working with this college student because they don't know what they're doing. They're not going to tell me I did something wrong. I don't have to live with shame. I did something wrong. I could just, keep it going this way. And that was absolutely just crushing them. They were making no financial decisions, um, heavy impact in taxes, tax season, always kind of just felt like they're always buried. And we go like, no, let's hire a professional. They'll actually just clean up the books. No shame. You're a young business owner. You didn't know how to do it then. You know how to do it now. Hire, delegate, get it done right, and get that way. So
Well,
delegating is another one.
yeah, and in a way, it's like I see it as, like think about going to the gym. If you don't hire the right personal trainer, if you just hire some guy that looks like maybe he's worked out before or he just graduated from I know how to work out school, like that's not going to get you where you need to go. And again, it's just the classic choosing what you're familiar with or what you're comfortable with instead of taking what the big boy big girl approach and really maturing as a business.
Yeah, you just kind of sparked something in me there because what would I be afraid of in not hiring a professional? Well, one is that fraud feeling I feel that like, oh, they're going to find me out. The professional is going to know I didn't actually know what I'm going to do. And then I would question my own ability to lead. So I actually don't step into leadership because I'm not actually leading or doing something anymore. I'm really just keeping the people around me that don't know as much so I can feel more empowered. Where real leadership knows how to work with those people around them and hires people better than them and leverages their ability, but still gets the work done, provides the vision, and creates the direction. So,
Yeah, exactly. And Ed, spot on. Imposter syndrome.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so, um, those two big ideas to me already are like, if you want to know where you're stuck, I'd say if you are related to the people you're working with or feel like a relationship's holding you back from moving on, you can recognize where that would slow things down. But also if you at 2 o'clock in the morning you're doing a job that is not the job that you wanted to do in life, right? If there's no reason for you to be building out computers at 2 a.m. if you're a creative director, um, you haven't stepped into or led your company in the right direction. Those are the first two items. This third one to me is like kind of a bigger thought, right? Because what often happens when it comes to growing your business and getting stuck is that you're actually afraid for yourself where it might take you. I feel this way as a business owner early on too. Like my early thoughts of business ownership were things of, I thought I was supposed to already know it all. And therefore, the need to ask or the need to put myself in a position where I would go somewhere I'm not comfortable and a client's going to require something of me really made me hold back. And I stuck with things I only knew. It wasn't until one of our clients, and I think you were working with me at the time, but one of our clients basically said to me, listen, can you actually take and manage this this moment, this opportunity for me? And I thought, well, I could. I would have to figure it out. And that's when the client basically told us, yeah, somebody has to figure it out. Go ahead and figure it out. And that really broke things open for us at RevThink. And I've seen this happen with creative agencies as well. There's a moment where they know that this is a bigger project and they're not used to it. They're used to a $20,000, $30,000 project. And there's opportunity for a $120,000 project at their doorstep. And because they've never done something at that scale before, my feeling is they sabotage themselves. They basically prove to themselves that they weren't qualified and they don't follow through. But the reality of a $30,000 job and a $120,000 job is the same work. It's the same skill level. You're still the same person. You're still getting it done. You're just going to manage more at a different scale. And to step into that problem, knowing that you can accomplish it, is one of the biggest hangups we have. It's not something we always like to do or very comfortable with.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to that same small mindset of I'm afraid of what growing looks like. Excuse me. Sorry, call coming in. But it goes back to that small growth mindset of here's what I can control and here's what I'm comfortable with. And until we push past that barrier, like we sabotage ourselves and we're stuck.
Yeah. And I like that term of self-sabotage. I think that self-sabotage is really the problem we have when it comes to building something, because we don't know where we're going. And so we hold back, and that holding back because we're afraid of not knowing, instead of leaning into it and growing, we self-sabotage. What happens is something breaks, which proves to us that we are right. We couldn't do it, so it's okay, and makes us feel better about this personal failure moment. Instead of stepping into it and saying, well, because here's where it hurts, right? I actually leaned into it. I tried to grow, and then I failed. Right? That thought of that would hurt so much more. Then I did the best I can, and it didn't work. Okay, well, I guess that's fine. But to actually have to admit, no, I actually tried. I actually worked twice as hard, or I spent time learning and growing, and the moment wasn't there for me. I like that idea of self-sabotage, because that's what we're doing internally. We're actually setting ourselves up just in case we fail, and then making it okay for us. Where the folks I know, what I seem to see is like a grit on the other end of it. They say, oh no, listen, I know that I have to grow, or my company has to grow, or my employees have to grow. There needs to be moments of growth, and that failure is part of the process. And being comfortable with that moment of failure as a successful step towards that growth, instead of taking it all out on yourself because there's a moment of failure. That's where, you have to get past that hurt.
Well, and one of the things that I love about what we do, Tim, is like, we don't prevent every failure. There's still a bad hire happens, those kinds of things. But I because of our experience and because of our exposure to so many different studios, we can see that failure developing sooner on the horizon more often, and we can coach through it and around it. And so one of the fears that you have as an owner in going, yeah, I do want to branch out and get that $120,000 job versus the smaller job, and then you end up self-sabotaging, is that we can see that coming and mitigate that faster and minimize the impact. Because one of the fears that I have sometimes is it's not just, well, wait, what happens if I fail at that one job or winning or executing on that? It's like, what happens if that failure, if I have to take 2 steps backwards instead of 1 step forward? And I think that's the fun part of what we get to do too, is, well, shoot, failure happened. Well, it's only a 1 step back instead of 2, or half a step back, because we can see it on the horizon, or we can manage it, or we can pivot quickly and resolve it. And we don't have the burden of ownership in some ways, that like we don't get mired in the minutia and the feeling and the guilt and all that kind of stuff. We help people push past that.
Yeah, what's funny is again, wow, it's so good to have you on this weekly briefing, by the way, Jay. I feel like you trigger so many great thoughts of what it's really like to kind of walk through this, because there is, what if it's just reframing that idea that the failure isn't a step backwards, although there's greater resistance, right? In the moment, something that didn't go the way you planned really means you hit a greater resistance. But what if that's really actually what you have to overcome in order to achieve something? One thing I find that's so interesting is that business owners often imagine that a larger business feels more successful, and therefore it has less failures to deal with. We're using the word failure, but less resistance to deal with. And they often want to work, their imagination says the best place to work has the least resistance. Therefore, a greater company, more bodies, longer time in the business, whatever that more mature kind of archetype feels to them, has this sense of less resistance. But in absolute reality, and this, Jay, you've watched companies grow from 3 million to 20 million while working with them, that it's actually not less resistance, it is 7 times more resistance. And the business owner that's maturing is actually the one that has figured out how to work with resistance instead of try to avoid resistance. And it's that avoiding is where you hold yourself back. You fail. It's the third big sin here. Did I lose you?
No, sorry. No, absolutely. And going back to that gym analogy, like the resistance is where you build muscle, where you develop, and that's the key part. Is pushing, again, we've been talking about pushing yourself past that comfort zone and into territory that you may not be ready for. But when you do, and when you execute, there's usually a reward.
So let's put ourselves in the situation today, right? Let's say we're talking to a potential client. They call us, and they said to us, "Jason, I feel stuck. Right? I've been doing this job for 7 years. I had a couple of years of growth early on, but I've been now hovering around $2 million and just below $2 million for about 4 years now. And I must be doing something wrong, because I know I've hired a different creative director. I've hired a salesperson. I've fired 3, producers so far. What can you get me unstuck? Where would you start? What would be the next question you ask that business owner with that question?
Tell me about your team.
Yeah. And what would you listen for if I tell you about my team? You want me to tell you about my team? I can run through. I'll say my team is great. I've been working with this guy, Emmett, for 3 of those years. I can't let him go. He's my right hand.
There's your problem. No, yeah. There's your solution.
It's Emmett. Right. So the team makeup, right? Who that person is, you're listening for what? You're listening to, are they family? Do you have family attached to you? And are you sticking with somebody because you have a relationship, or if they're a professional, right? That's the first question you're asking.
Yeah. And again, I'd be going, the first thing that I'd be listening for in that team is size. So do we have the right amount of people to solve the problems that we're trying to solve? And then the second thing is, and I see this often, is even though you have good people on your team, you have them doing the wrong roles, and you get stuck with, I have a client right now who, they're kind of stuck with one of them doing a lot of production related work and a lot of business operations work. So there's some client management in there, but there's also a lot of time on the box and execution and things like that. And really the solution for them to unlock what's next is to ensure that that person isn't trying to do both of those roles. Because go ahead.
Right. No, I was going to say, I'll give this example, and who I'm talking about here is like the next question I had is like, okay, well, if you're stuck below 2 million, tell me about your sales process.
Yeah.
Tell me what sales looks like. And this one business owner would say, well, no, I'm the salesperson.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, well, that's great. So then what other roles do you do? Well, I'm the salesperson. I'm the executive producer. I
Yeah.
actually do some of the 3D compositing when we need to. And when there's a live action shoot, I'm the live action shoot producer. And you think, yeah, you haven't delegated. You
Right.
actually, you keep the one, probably in his mind, he's thinking, I don't trust someone else to do it because I don't know it well enough myself. So I don't know if how to get someone else to do 3D compositing. I haven't led that process yet. I might as well just micromanage it, hold on to it, and do it the way I want to, instead of taking the time to mature someone else, grow them, and be able to delegate it to them. And that business owner, salesperson, VP, creative director will always hold back the business. You cannot do all those jobs. So you're right. If you're going to get past that moment, and you have to look at the team size and team makeup and say, do you have a person for each position in your business? Do you have, here's the positions you need. Do you have someone doing each person have a different role?
And I think another big challenge is the failure of let's just call it an owner. If there's more than one, this can happen a lot more easily. But going back to the guy who had the apartment and now he's 25% owner of the company, it's like that person probably could have found a way to solve bigger problems and add more value, but they siloed themselves. Whatever it was at that juncture in the business, that's what they needed. And that was a fine thing to do. But when they stayed stuck in that rut, when all that person did was have the apartment and kind of move on to managing finances and didn't do it as well as necessary, like they were stuck. And that person could have done something more. Maybe they could have been into sales or more into the entrepreneurship and working on the business side of things, but they weren't. And so
what's that question? What's the question that you would ask to get to be able to diagnose that, or that someone can ask themselves to diagnose that, right? Would it be something like, well, tell me the last big growth you experienced? Something like that, where you can hear how they process growth, or would you challenge them to grow in a certain way? What would be the question you would ask them to get them to recognize, oh, it's that problem, the fear of failure problem that you're up against?
So my first question is, why are you doing what you do? Like in simply put, like, okay, great. So you're the EP. Why? Okay, cool. Is that your best role? And who else on your team might do that? Or are you coordinating or managing production? Why?
Yeah. And what you're implying there is based on the answer you would hear, is this the reason you started the business? Is this the life that you were making for yourself?
There you go.
Or are you just filling in roles that you haven't figured out or are afraid of letting go of, instead of actually choosing the life you want to live and having the business provide for that life for you? Yeah.
And we get told so much, like, oh, you've got to manage this part, particularly on finance. It's really, really hard to let go of that, because it's one of the, let's not say it's one of the main reasons that we got into business, but it's the element of our business that creates the freedom that we're looking for, or what have you. It's finance. So we're often it's often one of the first things that we should let go of. But it's often the last thing, or one of the last things that people let go of. They want to control that finance. And I understand that, but it keeps you small when you're doing, bookkeeper / financial oversight or things like that, when what you really should be doing is sales, is a creative director, those kinds of things.
Let's answer these two questions real quick, because we're at the top of the bottom of the hour, but we recognize that people have to leave the half hour till, but there's two great questions that have popped up here. The first one comes to us and it says, what about being typecast in the kind of projects you're doing, for basically being stuck in a certain budget range, basically? So what if a company is stuck in such a way of being seen from the outside as something different? What is the problem? Oh, so like, what is the sin the business owner is committing against themselves by letting themselves get stuck that way? Do you have a thought?
Well, my first question is, are they right? Like, is that type that you've been cast? Is that correct? Because if it is, well, that's your fault. But if it's not, well, I mean, I have a client that I'm working with now that we're working to recast ourselves. The projects that we've won in the past are not the juicy bread and butter type projects that we're looking for now. And what I encourage people to do is you've got to evaluate internally, like, why are you being handed those kinds of jobs only? Probably you have someone probably your salesperson's not doing or in the wrong role. That would be my first guess. I mean, but
what I love about that is, like, what you're saying is you have to be willing to tell yourself the truth, right? When I hear this question, I hear something like positioning. What are you saying? If you ask me a question, how come every job I get is basically I'm flipping hamburgers? And I was like, well, maybe you should take off the McDonald's shirt when you go do the job interview. You know what I mean? Like, that's just who you present yourself as when you're asking for that project. Unleashes something, but you have to be willing to tell yourself the truth and not say, like, no, I always said this, or no, I worked hard on this website, whatever that stuff is, that we hold ourselves back instead of having this moment of, like, no, I can't unleash. I can become a character, a personality, and get myself out there. So
when you walk around with a spatula and ask everybody if they want fries with that, you look like you're from McDonald's. And it's, to be clear, it's not easy sometimes to break out of that, because what's an indicator of being ready for a different type of job, or looking for budget would be one, right? Like, oh, well, I'm gonna increase what I'll just say my minimum engagement is, or I'm gonna increase the bids and the kind of work that I'm bidding on. Well, again, it's pretty tough to get people to ask you to deliver a steak when you've got a McDonald's shirt on and a spatula in your hand.
Yeah, it just doesn't. You're not positioning yourself in the right place. Let's ask Nicole's question, because Nicole's kind of asking a chicken and an egg question. Like, here's the one she's bringing up. A startup production company doesn't really have the finances to basically hire all those professionals when you need them. Like, sometimes you're starting off, you have low budgets, low revenue, and you actually can't just run around and kind of do that. So how do you kind of get out of that? Well, it would be really great if I could hire a professional, but I don't have the money to do it. And if I spend the money to do that, I'm basically sabotaging my business. I have a thought about that. Do you have a thought?
I mean, well, my first thought is that's true for almost everybody. Nobody starts with $3 million or a staff of 10 or 20 or 30 to get things going. I mean, and in fact, how many partnerships have we dealt with, Tim, where it was two great partners that came together and decided, let's go do cool stuff? Nope. That was my college roommate, or I knew this person from so-and-so, and they're good at this and I'm good at that. Maybe we could work together. So they were partnerships that were born out of necessity, if you will, rather than, rather than strategy. And that's okay. That's real for a lot of companies. You just have to lean into the pivot. And the pivot is, again, goes back to, you've got to get out of the roles that don't work for you as soon as you can.
Yeah. So I would say this is very much like that. It's first things first, right? That's how you get yourself out of this trap. So if you don't have the finances, the person you should hire, the first person you should not hire is a creative director, right? You should not hire a big, expensive person that does the same job that you do. Because two creative directors aren't going to get there. But you can imagine saying, I'm a creative director, hiring a producer, first things first, would help me, one, be a better creative director. I could creative direct more projects. So now my pipeline is increasing and my win rate might change because I'm focusing only on creative. But also, if I hire a producer, the producer manages the budget of the project. So the producer pays himself with whatever money is inside that bucket. And when you allocate that portion of the budget to production and the producer pays himself first, they basically have to figure out how to get the job done with whatever's left. And that first things first moment allows the producer to actually start solving problems that you aren't going to solve by overstaffing a project or trying to figure out how to do it all across your desk. But also someone like a salesperson, a bookkeeper, these other kind of smaller items. A bookkeeper is, we always tell people start with a bookkeeper because you pay them by the hour. It's about $20
Mhm.
an hour, $50 an hour in some cases, depending on the skill level. And they work hourly. You're talking about $200, $300, $400 a month. But what they're doing is getting all of your financial decisions out in front of you. Now you can actually start seeing the finances, recognizing the moments and opportunity when you have money in your checking account, and step into those moments and hire new people. But
Mhm.
if you don't have the visibility in your finances and you're just guessing, you'll always feel like you're stuck behind this 8 ball.
Right.
So yeah, that first things first is part of it. Then strategic growth is one of those mechanisms that's well coordinated, and you can get through some of these transitions. Um, but it's really interesting kind of moment here. Oh, Nicole wants to join us. Nicole, you want to jump in and say hi? Nicole, if you want to join us, you can. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi there.
Okay, hi. So this is great. And you want to know why this is great? Just yesterday, I was speaking to my colleague and I was talking to him saying, hey, let's do a project together. Now, we went to school together and we're both in productions. We do the exact same thing. We film, we edit, motions, Pro Tools, the graphics, the works. He's better at certain things, a lot of things more than me. He's better at the graphics. He's better at the cinematography and the editing. I'm more of a storyteller and I'm more of, I've grown more into the business side. My question to you is this, gentlemen. We are creatives, and this is one of the things we were going back and forth with, and I kind of want to share this with you. Creatives don't think like this. Creatives don't
Yes, we
think
know.
about budget. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we would spend hours on the story and on the editing. We do not spend hours on our finances and how to budget it out. We do it for our shot list and we do it for the production, but not the budget. I've grown into understanding the finances for the sake of myself and other, my fellow uh, people who I work with, fellow colleagues.
Yeah. No,
So,
Nicole, you bring up a
what
very
do
good
you
point.
do?
It's actually the
Why we have a
creative business
job.
owner. Yeah. The creative business owner is in a very unique position because they often are practicing a skill in a different part of their brain than the analytical parts are needed to run a business, which is why we've built certain tools or have certain processes that come alongside that creative mind. So our thought is what decisions are you already making, and how do we get you to see your financial decisions while making that shot list, instead of trying to make a financial decision in one bucket and a shot list in another. Maybe we can blend those decisions together. So some of the methods that we put in place really has that embrace, and it's taken us, obviously we're talking about decades to kind of get to a point where we recognize that. But you're
Right.
absolutely right. There is something about being the creative, running your creative business, that sometimes you have to get out of your way or pivot differently.
If I may, so one of the things I was suggesting, because I'm kind of sad that I have to focus on so much business, and sometimes I get jealous that my fellow colleagues are out there filming and what have you, and I'm stuck somewhere, having to write out a business plan and look for funding. So then what I was suggesting is, and I was talking to him, shouldn't we try to look for business people? Like, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. Do you see how I could make money? And if they say, yeah, okay, fine, work that out. And we start creating the content. And then you kind of guide us to say, hey, get that content going because I'm going to shop it here. We'll do this and do that because I'm going to do there. As opposed to us doing it. And,
I feel like
that's
Nicole is like making a commercial for us, Jay. This is like the best question you
We're
can buy.
recording this,
You
right?
should hire business people to help you run your creative business.
Yeah.
Join us at revthink.com/community. We can help. No. You know what, Nicole, you're already doing the entrepreneurial formula, right? Needs plus resources equals solution.
Yep.
And the entrepreneur is one that recognizes what that need is and is starting to process what's the right steps or right people to do that with. Jason already gave you some warning of like, you can actually get into a very bad partnership. You chose someone just because of the convenience in the moment, and you're stuck with them like a long marriage. instead of working with somebody in the moment at the right time. So making creative decisions and making business decisions have to go hand in hand. But I'll just say it's not the fact that you have to make them, it's how you choose to make those decisions is what's going to help you out as a creative person. And to think through what the real problems are instead of really trying to conform to other people's ideas of how businesses should be run, or the way a bookkeeper or a CPA is going to prepare your finances. It might not match the way your brain works running a production pipeline. So to open up those opportunities are really key. Listen, it's 2:40, so we're 10 minutes past the hour, but we obviously do and can talk about this all day. What Jason and I want you to know is, and the reason we bring this up is that we want you to be able to look and think at yourself and let you know that you deserve the right to run and live run the business and live the life that you wanted to when you started this. So by creating some of these moments and bringing up these examples is to get you to think internally, to say, what is holding me back? What lies am I telling myself? What objectives do I need to overcome? What are some of the situations that I need to grow within, or people I need to delegate to, and start making those steps, because you actually do deserve it. Trust me, a person that doesn't have the creative talent that all of you have, I want you to thrive and do something great, because I think the world's a more beautiful place because of it. And untrapping that mind and that person is some of our objectives. We like to say we exist so you thrive in business, life, and career. And that's what's at the heart of everything we're doing here. Any last thoughts, Jay, before we say goodbye to anyone?
I mean, it's just a privilege to, what you shared, Nicole, it's exactly which, look, you guys all get out of bed in the morning because you make amazing content. That's what drives you. Being able to partner with studios to help them do that is what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's so fun. It's such a privilege to come into your studios and businesses in a way that's, probably sometimes difficult to let people into that level of vulnerability. And the trust you place in us is amazing. And I just am always grateful for it.
Okay, Jason, now you said that I've changed my mind. I'm not going to let you know.
Good.
I'm really afraid of that.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, I just want you to know that we love you. We're here to support you. Yes. Anything we can do, let us know. You can reach out to us on RevCommunity at community.revthink.com. Reach out to us personally, DM us, whatever is available to us. This and many other questions we'd like to answer. So, Jason, thanks for living with me for the last, we're going to call it 14 years, and putting up with this journey with us. But I'm with you. To wake up every day and do this is a great thing.
It really is.
And until next week, you all have a great week. It's great to see your faces. And Phil, come on, man, we got to catch up sometime soon.
We will. Thank you guys so much.
All right, talk to you later.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody.